and they would do things to these children. So, but we hope that everybody would understand that this type of violence do have devastating consequences on a child. So a child who is a victim of physical violence would either grow up to become a very violent person himself or herself, a person who will grow to believe and think that might is right. And if you are an adult, you can do whatever you like to somebody who is younger, who is weaker. But it can also have a devastating effect on their education. It can have a devastating effect on their relationship with that adult carer. If it's about sexual abuse, we know the damning effect it can have on the health, the well-being, the total well-being of a child. So we urge everybody to discipline children. I think that's important. We are not saying that children ought not to be disciplined. I think children ought to be disciplined. Children ought to be punished if they do something wrong. But the punishment has to fit the offense. Secondly, the punishment has to respect the human dignity of that child. The punishment should not be degrading or dehumanizing. But everybody ought to know that there are laws and rules. If they are broken, there are consequences to be paid. So you have positive reinforcement or logical consequences in classroom management, in classroom discipline, or we have withdrawal of privileges and quite a lot of other more effective, because discipline is about learning something positive, ensuring that you do not repeat what you have done, but you're also learning something effective, something positive from whatever rules are broken. I think for me that's more important. Imagine a parent slapping a child or beating a child who accidentally pour water on the floor. You know, I mean, what would be more effective is ask that child to mop the floor, so he understands that when you pour water accidentally, you go mop the place. When a child breaks something, he pays for it. If it's about school fees, school lunch, the person knows that no, if you break things, you repair. Even in our VOOS, we have it there. You break what they would call the cast, the small glass. They would say, don't pay, but replace. Buy another one and replace. So everybody takes up responsibility for whatever infraction you have done. And I think for me that would be more effective than the images that we have seen on the screen.
Okay, thank you again. You talked about the issue of sexual abuse, which again came in the documentary. And we know in this country, people have the idea that the reason why we have cases of rape, especially of younger girls, of course, and children, or any other person, is because of the way they dress. Do we think, or do you think that dress code has something to do with the sexual abuse of young girls or even older women out there in our communities?
I don't buy that argument at all. Of course, I know people are very good at finding excuses for other people. People would commit crimes and they would say, and they would find all some forms of excuse. And I think the dress, for me it's not a dress code, it's the way one dresses, is a very good excuse that people have or try to give for somebody who has raped. But I think if we try to understand the whole issue around rape, rape for me is about power, is about abuse, is about betrayal of trust. Period. Because where is the issue of the dress code or the way a person dresses? If you have a father who sexually abused a daughter, where is the issue of the dress? Or you have a teacher abuse a student, or you have a social worker, somebody who works like Njundu in an organization, abuse a child who she works with. The issue of the dress code doesn't come. I mean, not long ago we read on the papers of a man who abused a baby, a 6-month-old baby. So where is the issue of the way you are dressed? I think we need to understand that abuse is not spontaneous. Rape is not a spontaneous action. You just don't do it on the spot. You calculate. You have you have a whole grooming process. You have a whole grooming process. The Mandinkas tell you that hinkolen, ferekolen, dalikolen. If you take those approaches towards a person, a lady, you get that person, and that is about grooming. So it's not about dress code, because if somebody meets a girl who is dressed inappropriately to your standard, I mean, you wouldn't jump on that person. Probably you would ask the name, where the person comes from, and so the whole grooming exercise starts there. I mean, David Finkelhor said before a person sexually abuses a child, there are 4 preconditions that you have to overcome. One, he said you have to have the motivation to abuse. Secondly, he said you have to overcome the internal inhibitors, that's your conscience. Thirdly, you have to overcome the external inhibitors, the environment. And fourthly, you have to overcome the resistance of this child. And so you may overcome one inhibitor, but you may not be able to overcome the other inhibitors, and you wouldn't abuse. So, because if you want to abuse, if you do not have the motive to abuse, you wouldn't abuse. Even if you have the motive to abuse, but your conscience is not allowing you to do it, you would not. But what people do is they beat their conscience. They engage in what is called distorted rationalization. So you will see people abuse children and say, well, she needed my money. He needed my money. He wanted some promotion. He is from a poor family, and I'm only helping them. Your reason is your rationalization is distorted. It's wrong. It's bad. You can't justify that. And we know that it's no lancing for anybody to abuse anyone just because of the way the person is dressed. Of course, I have a caveat. Is that of course, if you are a Muslim or you Christian or you belong to a religion or whatever faith, it's important that we dress decently. We dress in a very dignifying way. But you know what I always tell people: if you meet a girl who dress in an inappropriate way, you are just like passing through the night. You may not see that person at all for the rest of your life. Because where do we meet? On the road. Yeah. In the car park, in the vehicle, somewhere. And I know if the Quran tells us women to dress appropriately, it also tells men to lower your gaze. So men should lower their gaze. If you lower your gaze, you wouldn't see. Certainly. Maybe you will just bump into somebody else, but you wouldn't see what your eyes wants to avoid.
Okay. But again, most of the reports in the country, most of the reports that we see on the papers or sometimes at workplaces, they're not necessarily people who, maybe one can say, can dress inappropriately. They're mainly young children who are 7 years, 10 years, 12 years. And then those who dress inappropriately are mostly those who are about 16 and up to 20. And rarely do we have cases of children or younger people at that age being raped. It's mainly those who are less powerless, 7 years or 9 months or 10 months.
But even if that category is raped, you realize the use of force there, the use of coercion, the use of blackmailing. Because probably you could have a father abusing a daughter of that age. But if you look at it, it's about the father employing some coercion, some force on that person, some threats. So I think we should rethink the issue of the dress code. I think dress code, every place has some dress code. You know, and it's so difficult also, Bakari, to legislate fashion. Because fashion is so, it's so fleeting. So fleeting that you probably, one thing may be fashion today and tomorrow it's no longer fashion. Right. But of course, children ought to dress appropriately.
Okay, right. So just to look at just one key issue, that is the issues of abuse of children by all settings. Rarely are they reported. I mean, the reporting is not adequate. Now, what do we think as a country, I mean, at CPA also, at government level, what can be done to improve the situation, to ensure that cases are properly reported and properly documented, but also that as a country we move out from this issue of people abusing children?
I think everybody ought to, apart from the things you have mentioned, everybody every adult ought to see himself or herself as a shepherd for the children. every older child, 16, 17, 18, should also see himself or herself as a shepherd